You read the title of the video, you clicked it. Yes, it is true. I do know who the winner of the 2025 DCI finals will be. You know, I'm very in with the judges now. I've been talking with them. We've decided who's going to win. And so I'm going to tell you guys all right now. And you all know what I'm going to say.
Preparing the Krabby Patty.
Okay, in all seriousness, it is finals week. We've had a whole season of competition, and finally, we are heading into the last 3 shows of the season. So there's a lot of information that we've gained this season, a lot of flipping up and down, but I decided I want to make my official finals predictions now that we have just 3 more competitions left. There's a lot that could change, so this is not necessarily like a slam dunk to just guess who's going to win here now that we only have 3 shows left. There's a lot that could happen, but I'm going to give my guess as to who I think will be where when it comes to the final day of competition this Saturday in Indianapolis. So let's just jump right into it. First, we're going to start with a sort of honorable mention. We're going to start with who I think will be in 13th place, just outside of finals. And that group is Spirit of Atlanta. I think they have a really impressive show and a strong concept, and I think that it's kind of got a big fan following. A lot of people really love that show. I think the crowd's going to absolutely give it up for them on semis, and so I think that's going to kind of boost them right past Madison Scouts. They've kind of been battling back and forth, but ultimately, I think the Spirit of Atlanta will end in 13th, and I think they will get an 86.2. All right, moving on to our first finalist. In 12th place, I believe that the Colts will end in 12th place. They have a really strong brass section and color guard, and especially a really strong percussion section, but I don't think that's quite enough to move them up into 11th place, so I think they're going to end in 12th place with an 87.9. All right, moving on to 11th place, my home team, the Blue Knights. Super proud of all the work they've done. I think that they have really strong GE scores and especially the really strong visual scores. I think that's actually going to be the difference between them and the Colts. I think that's what's going to boost them just past the Colts. But, you know, they're also the fan favorite this year. They've won 4 out of 4 fan favorites, and it's insane. So I think the crowd is going to give it up for them in Indianapolis, and I think that's going to help towards those general effect scores as well. But I think the Blue Knights will end in 11th place with an 88.2. All right, now moving on to our 10th place. I think the Troopers will end in 10th place. Their closer, amazing. They have changed and added a lot to their show in this second half of the season. They're super strong in GE, percussion, and brass, but color guard and like overall visual package, it's going to hold them back from, I think, moving up further. Nevertheless, really great show and a great end to the trilogy as well for the Troopers. I think they're going to end in 10th place with an 89.2. In 9th place, I have the Blue Stars. Again, another very enjoyable show and an incredible brass section. I've said this many times, I really am a huge fan of the Blue Stars brass section. And I think their brass is going to place higher than 9th for the record. But in the end, I do think their percussion scores will keep them from moving up past 9th place. The GE scores might be a little bit unpredictable depending on the judge, but ultimately, I think they're going to end in 9th with an 89.6. In 8th place, the Cavaliers. This one was kind of unexpected. If I were to make this prediction a long time ago, I would not have put them here, but they've kind of found their stride in the second half of the season. They've got a lot of momentum going into finals, and the judges are reflecting that on the sheets. They have a super strong percussion section, as they have had for the past couple years, but honestly, I think it's their brass section that has kind of caught up. They've really kind of fought their way back, and I think their brass section will kind of minimize some of the points, the loss that other groups have lost below them, and so ultimately, I think they're going to end in 8th with a 90.4. Now moving on to our 7th place drum corps, and I think for the second year in a row, I think the Mandarins will end in 7th. Their show maybe has lost a little momentum in the second half of the season, but it might also just be that more so that the other top 6 groups have improved their show at a larger margin than the Mandarins have. But I am a big fan of this drum corps, especially the brass. They sound amazing, and I'm also a huge fan of John Mapes' drum line. It's just, I think there's a lot of really cool things going on at the Mandarins. So I don't think this year is like a dud. I don't think that the Mandarins are going backwards. I don't think this year is it's a step backwards for the core. So I anticipate that we'll continue to grow over the next couple of years, and certainly next year I think it's going to be even better for Mandarins. But I think they're going to end in 7th place with a 92.2. All right, now we're getting into some of the crazy stuff here. In 6th place, This one's going to be really close. I think this core will win in GE and percussion, but lose in brass, music analysis, and visual proficiency. And I think that will cause them to end in 6th. But the 6th place core that I'm predicting is going to be Phantom Regiment. This is my prediction of what I think will happen and not necessarily what I want to happen. I'm a really big fan of the Phantom Regiment over the past couple years, and I do like this show a lot. But ultimately, I do think that they're going to end in 6th, and I think they're going to end with a 93.8. Now moving on to 5th place, Carolina Crown. Honestly, Crown kind of came out of nowhere in the second half of the season. Like literally in the past week alone, they've kind of just boosted up a lot. So I think a lot of that has to do with their new ending. Really exciting new ending, adds a lot to their show. But I honestly think their horn line kind of figured something out. I think their horn line has improved a lot, and that's helped them out on the sheets. But they're moving really clean on the field as well. So Carolina Crown, I think, will beat Phantom just at the finish line, and I think they're going to end their season with a 94.2, and they'll end their season in 5th place again for the 2nd year in a row. All right, now moving on to 4th place. This is a historic one, and not really for a good reason, but I think the Blue Devils will end their season in 4th place. This is historic because this will mark the first time in 20 years, since 2005, that the Blue Devils did not medal. Ultimately, the Blue Devils are still really good. Like, they are an incredible core, but the top 3 cores are just better. I think that there's a little lack of clarity to the brass, to the percussion, visually as well. Across the board, I think there's just a little bit of fuzz that is, I think, not allowing them to hit as hard as some of these other cores. But BD does do finals really well. Like, they come out and they are really good at making those last improvements in the final week, but I'm not sure that's enough at this point, how I see it. So I'm guessing that the Blue Devils will end their streak of medaling for the past 20 years, and they're going to end in 4th with a 96.1. All right, now for our bronze medalist, and my personal favorite show of this year, we have the Santa Clara Vanguard in 3rd place. They just have such a compelling show to me. I just love the avant-garde idea, the avant-garde sound and look, and depending on who the judges end up being on finals, I could see them stealing some ones, like in some subcaptions across the board in random spots. And as for their brass and percussion sections, they might even win. Like, they're in the conversation. So this is just such a solid core, and it's a fantastic show. So I think they're going to end in 3rd place with a 97.0. All right, before we get into our top 2 cores, I'm going to go ahead and go through the caption awards, my predictions for the caption awards, starting with the color guard. I think that it's been pretty decided from the start. Boston will win guard unless something crazy happens, but their guard is fantastic. And I do personally love the Blue Devils guard, and I think they're not really getting a lot of credit for what they're doing. Boston is incredible, and they've been just doing amazing all season, and so I'll have to go with Boston Crusaders for my prediction for the Color Guard Award. Now for the Visual Award, I think this will go to the Bluecoats. I think this is not a crazy take. They look phenomenal. They move super well on the field. Like, from the very beginning, from their preview show, when I watched them kind of jazz run in that first opening moment, I was like, dang, their legs look great. They really have a great understanding of the technique, a great understanding of the different qualities being asked of them visually, and I think they're going to win the Visual Award, and I think it's well-deserved as well. All right, now moving on to the Jim Ott Brass Award. This may be a hot take, and maybe honestly it's wishful thinking, but I believe that SEV has what it takes to steal the brass title this year. And the reason I think this is because they've been receiving really high content scores, like 1s in content at some big regionals, and they're in the position right now to peak at just the right moment and take that brass title in the end. If the judges get a good read of this horn line over those 3 nights, they might just find themselves with the highest average and bring home that brass trophy. But again, maybe a stretch, but I believe it's possible, and I hope it does happen, and I'm locking in my prediction for best brass going to SEV. Now moving on to the percussion caption. This one has also been kind of close all season, and as of right now, Boston has kind of dominated the second half of the season in the percussion caption. But in many past years, Boston has kind of plateaued right before finals. They've kind of peaked a little too early, and other cores have passed them year after year. But not this year. I think this year, the judges are giving them all the credit that they need to hold on to the Percussion title, and I think they're going to win Percussion this year. Now, something crazy could happen if a rogue judge ends up giving Boston like fourth one of those nights. And that could really drop their average and open up an avenue for another core who kind of gets seconds across the board. Like Bluecoats a couple years ago, they got second. They didn't even win any of the nights, but they got seconds across the board, and that allowed them to win the drum trophy without even winning a single night. So if something crazy like that happens, we may see some upsets, but I do think that the judges are kind of teeing it up for Boston to finally take home that drum trophy. So my prediction will be Boston for the Percussion Award. And finally, we have the GE Award. I think this is pretty straightforward. I think it's going to go to the Bluecoats. They have been, for the most part, just slightly ahead of the Boston Crusaders all season in the GE category. And I think that this will be another close one, but I think something dramatic would have to happen in order for this to change. Bluecoats have a lot of elements in their show that translate well to the GE sheets, in my opinion. So I think they will take home the award for GE at the end of the night. All right, now that that's out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about our second place silver medalist core. This year has been super fun to watch, specifically because there's like not really a clear front runner. There's a lot of flip-flopping going around. These two cores have battled it out, jumped back and forth, but ultimately, I'm going to officially predict that the Boston Crusaders will end in second place. Now listen, before you get mad, look, they execute their show so insanely well. They're so clean, and it is a fun show to watch. However, the gap that they once had at the beginning of the season that kind of made everyone go like, whoa, Boston's going to win. That gap, I think, was due to their superior execution and excellence. But now that we're at the end of the season, a lot of these other cores, specifically Bluecoats and Vanguard, have caught up in that execution category, and that margin of execution has kind of shrunk, and that advantage has not played as well for the Boston Crusaders in this later half of the season. And so I think they're just going to end their season a hair behind the Bluecoats. I think it's going to be close, but I really do believe that a win from Boston would have been so awesome for the community. I think people would have really loved it, but I have to look at the sheets, and I have to go with my gut here, and I think that Boston will end in second place with a score of 97.7. And finally, in first place, obviously, we have the Bluecoats. I think it will be super close, like I said, but I think the Bluecoats will end their season with a tight victory over the Boston Crusaders and secure their first ever back-to-back championship. They've just cleaned up a lot in the second half of the season, and they just move so well. Like, they move so well. Ultimately, I think their GE and visual scores will be the reason why they will take on the championship in the end. And I personally think that if they do win, it's a deserved win. Both cores are absolutely blazing this year, and whichever core does win at the end of the day, that does not make the other core any less great, any less valid. But in this activity, we have to kind of translate this awesome, beautifully artistic work into a number on a sheet. And when it comes to those numbers, I think the Bluecoats are going to win, and I think they're going to win with a 98.0. So, guys, those are my takes. I am sure that there's going to be tons of comments on this video about what you disagree with or what you personally think will be the results, but please let me know in the comments. This is super exciting. The fact that there are so many unpredictable variables, so many unpredictable just things that we don't know will happen, that is so exciting. And that's really fun for us to enjoy a season where there's no possibility for an undefeated core. There's no kind of boring end to the season. It's going to be exciting all the way through. So again, I know you guys are, if you're watching this video, you're going to be super locked into all the scores, but pay attention to those prelims, semis, and final scores and watch as it develops, and it's going to be super exciting to watch. But thank you guys for watching this video. Again, leave your comments of your thoughts, and we're almost out. It's almost the end, guys. It's been fun. This season has been great. It's been awesome communicating with you guys, seeing the community respond, give their thoughts, their disagreements, and it's just been awesome. So again, thank you to everyone watching. If you're watching this video, if you made it this far, You guys have made my summer just so fun. I love seeing you guys at shows and just talking with you guys. You guys really make me like so happy to keep doing stuff like this. And if you're watching and you haven't subscribed, subscribe. There's like a stat that I saw that like 68% of the people watching this are not subscribers. So if you have the means to subscribe, go ahead and subscribe. But thank you guys. We're almost here at the end, but thanks for watching. Catch you in the next video. Peace.